Okay, guys, thank you for joining us. I see a bunch of new faces on the call. So with it being your first time, just going to explain kind of what we do. It's 30 minutes where we just try to bring you all together so you can see your teammates' faces, and then just also continued education. So to be able to offer something we think might be helpful for you all and something to think about for the week ahead. And then also give you guys an opportunity to ask us any questions, maybe about your training, something someone else doesn't know to ask that might end up helping one of your teammates. And so we always pick topics. And so for tonight's topic, as you read in the email, I posed to all the coaches, what does success look like for an athlete when they know they're going to do well? There's so many ways to answer that question, but so they might go in different directions with it. But for me, I posed the question to myself, like, how do I know when an athlete is going to do well? And so I'm going to pose that to the coaches. They're going to have a turn to go through that and give some input. So Jules, do you want to start us off?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so as far as the question, do you mean like how we know an athlete's going to do well, or what does success just look like in general?
Yeah, just what does success look like? And so again, you can answer it many ways. I know you've prepared a way for the question I posed, so go ahead with that.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as success with a race, I think everyone's brains just automatically go to a specific time or a specific split. For me, what I found with a lot of athletes, because it's very hard to have a very specific, number in mind for every single race that we do. It's looking into more of the details of, if an athlete doesn't normally fuel that well during the race, did they fuel well during this one, or more of those minor details that play a big role on if they're successful for that. So did they fuel well? How did they control their emotions? So looking away from the data and looking more at how they controlled the race, I think is a really great way to measure the success of it. Because the reason why I try not to stress numbers way too much for every single race is because flat tires happen, weather happens where it's not going to be maybe as on point as we would have liked. So how did you control the uncontrollables, essentially? So that's one of the ways that I'll look at success and measure success and try to emphasize that for my athletes as well.
Perfect. Yeah, very good. So the execution of the day. So well said. So Alex, we'll go to you. What does success look like?
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. So good to see everyone on this call. Success, when I know an athlete's going to be successful, it really comes down to consistency. If they're showing up and putting in the work beforehand and doing the recommended training and doing it consistently, you could tell that they're going to have a good result. But if it's interrupted by travel or they're not doing things consistently, and that comes down to every aspect of training. So if you look at the key pillars of what makes a successful athlete, it's not just doing the program, it's getting the rest in between and recovering efficiently between sessions. It's getting the right nutrition plan. It's like thinking ahead and putting together a sheet or a document that has each of your specific like the nutrition plan for what you're going to do and how you're going to execute that. And then becoming, being mentally prepared. I see so many athletes, including myself, that like, oh, if I win this race, I could go pro, or if I win this race, like I might win my age group. But then you kind of get in your own mental headspace, and then before the race, you kind of think yourself out of a good result, where small things on race day happen. You look at other athletes, like maybe like Jules said, you get a flat and mentally you're out of it. Like or in track and field, like Charlie will know this, like if you get spiked, it could just throw you mentally. And so if you kind of take a step back, zoom out opposed to zooming in, you could really get yourself the best result if you look at the day holistically as like, this is a swim, a bike, and then a run. And if something goes minorly wrong, if I get kicked in the jaw in the swim, that doesn't really matter for the end result of the day. You just got to keep checking in with yourself mentally. So it really comes down to those things, Natasha, being consistent and then being mentally prepared for your race.
Awesome. Great answer, Alex. Very good. Kyle, I'll turn to you next.
Sounds good. what I would kind of define as success for a race, and I've had this happen plenty of times myself, is like one race I can go out there and I can feel good all the way throughout a race and think I did really good. And then there's some races where you go out and kind of at the end of the day, you're like, I'm just looking to finish this in a sense, like kind of everything goes out the window. Maybe you're having a bad day, whatever it is. So for me, if I can go from like one race to another, what I can look back at is like last year, like let's say if I didn't have a good race to end the season or something like that, maybe I started this race this year and everything went right. Maybe I didn't get all the numbers I wanted to do, but overall I felt like I actually was racing in the race and competitive rather than just going out there to finish. So those are kind of some things I would look at in terms of what success would look like for an athlete.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, as you said, just learning how to race and improving upon what you were doing before, be it execution versus just looking at the results. So very good. Very good. Charlie, we're going to turn to the runner.
Yeah. So I think, well, first off, Jules, Alex, Kyle, great job. Kind of not a sandbag it, they took a lot of my answers that I had. But I think one thing that, like, for, I guess, the first part, knowing when an athlete is ready to go, it's just seeing their swagger, confidence going into the race within the build, within the work that's behind it. Jules and Alex kind of, spoke on that, just the preparation for the race, whether it's a 16-week, 12-week, 8-week block, getting ready for it. Have they gotten confidence behind their work that they've done, and has it grown as you've gotten closer to race day? Then as well, like, do they do the little things, just like Alex said, like weight room, gym, mobility sessions, all of that. So, and then for me, when it looks at like at a race, like Jules said, you get a flat, or, Alex, you get spiked, or you miss a bottle, at a race. Like, how do you see it through, no matter like what the circumstance is? Like, for me, like in a lot of races too, it's just like, how do you define success? And even though it wasn't going your way or something didn't go your way, like, did you see it through and finish it out? Obviously there's, like you said, there's timestamps, there's goals you want to hit, there's places you want to hit, but if you gave your all on that day, that's really all you can ask for in a race. So
awesome. Yeah, no, perfect. Just kind of echoing what everyone else said. I'd probably say they've covered most of the things. If Mackenzie, or we'll go to you next, if there's anything you want to add to that, go ahead. Otherwise we can start you on the next topic.
Yeah, I was just going to say, specifically for a successful athlete, I find the athletes who communicate really well based on what they're training, how their training is going, how life is going, those seem to be the athletes who are a little bit just more in tune with the training, the programming, and all of that. And so I found those athletes tend to be more successful on race day than the other athletes, good, bad, or indifferent. And then also athletes who have that intuition and understand their body and not pressing it when they don't need to be, and kind of backing off when they need to be. I found those athletes to also be very successful getting up to race day. And then just for a successful race, like getting to the starting line, I think is an incredible feat. So just being able to consistently train enough to get to the starting line, like that's a successful day in and of itself. And so you cross that starting line, like that's an amazing day. And I think we look for those times, and we look for placement, and we look for qualifying and all that stuff. But just being able to get there, to me, is a huge feat. And I find that extremely successful for all of us, anybody, to get to that start line on race day.
Awesome. No, well said. Spot on. Okay, Keegan and Dre, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, the only thing that I could really add is like adaptability. It's more just a word. Like, I think the athletes that can adapt to things are really the ones that do so well. I mean, as we see, a lot of times course gets shortened, sometimes races get canceled. Obviously, that's worst case scenario. But being able to adapt within the training, and even like everything that we're covering here, if you miss a bottle, you got to adapt your plan on the fly. You can't be just stuck to whatever it was. Sometimes you catch COVID and you have to recover, and it takes longer to get back into training. So for me, the athlete that can adapt to the situation and adapt to what's going on are the ones that are most successful, with everything else that's already been said. But adaptability is a big one that I see.
Yeah,
I was going to say consistency, but I feel like that's been covered. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, perfect, you guys. And then Coach Nick, I see you're on the call. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is so many athletes get coaching and sign up for a race and really have no concept or care of what the place or the time or anything else is, and really don't know to race. For them, it's about the journey. Maybe they joined because they wanted to lose weight. Maybe they joined because they just wanted to have a healthy lifestyle. So I think success a lot of times in longevity and the sport, you learn so many of the other things that have been talked about, but sometimes it kind of has a much deeper meaning that, you decide you were going to run a ultra or a marathon because you've just never done that. And you just wanted to embrace a challenge that you had no idea what you were getting into. And so just the ability to have success really means that you just made it through that process, and either you got to the start line, you finished the race, or maybe you set an example for your kid that, we're going to run and we're going to eat healthy, and it changed, your family's lifestyle. So I think sometimes, we look at very specific things in terms of a race, but oftentimes people sign up for a race for a much bigger purpose. And that really can define what people look at for success.
Yeah, no, it's spot on. That's perfect. And guys, the more I see like the top athletes, so obviously we have a number of pros on our team. Alice, for example, she went all the way to Mont Tremblant 70.3. Prior to it, she's someone who probably would have been on the podium today. And I said, like, what are you looking to do? And she was like, I'm just looking to have fun. I feel really confident in my preparation. This is a lifestyle. It's a dream for me to have. And so you have someone who could literally win a pro race, has money on the line, and they're not thinking about that. They're just looking to go out there and just try to express the fitness that they built. And then with that mindset, luckily, Mont Tremblant 70.3 was canceled today. So of course, there were so many people just devastated with all the time and the money and the preparation spent for that race and the possible prize money like she could have won. And she had such a level head about it and said, now I have a bigger training block to go into Lake Placid, which is their next race. And I just think for longevity in the sport, that's just absolutely important. Just to have that level head, look at it as a lifestyle versus just one key race, because otherwise it's going to disappoint you time and time again. And then the final thing I'd say, late in my career, it wasn't ever about how I would perform in the swim, bike, and run. It was all about mental and emotional control. I felt the most proud of the races where when things went wrong, I was able to stay focused and troubleshoot what was going wrong and put myself back on the right path while remaining positive. And if I could do that, that was an absolute success. I didn't even care about a result at that point. Okay, so we're going to move on. The second question I posed to all my coaches was common mistakes we keep on seeing with our athletes making. Maybe they're doing something in a workout and we keep on saying, don't do this, don't do that. Or we're maybe correcting them as soon as they're coming to this program. So let's start again from the beginning. I think Coach Jules, if you have something on common mistakes.
Yeah. I don't know if this would count as a mistake, but not taking care of your body outside of training. Alex kind of touched on this a little bit. I think it was Alex. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? A lot of people come into it and training really is only half of it, getting the training done, but are you fueling properly, not only in your training sessions, but around them? Like I'll have athletes who will come in, they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, hour bike workout fasted. And then halfway through just have to stop it because they're underfueled, getting brain fog, not feeling well, or, just getting too little of sleep. So really making sure, you're taking care of your body, because at least for athletes that I work with, a lot of them are coming into this and this is the first time they have your training, opposed to just randomly going to the gym every couple of times a week. And so really just being on top of, especially during the summer months, like being on top of your hydration, being on top of how you're eating, how frequently you're eating, as well as how you're sleeping. So I would probably say just, it's not just training, it's what you're doing around it and how you're taking care of your body around it. Because the more you hydrate, the more you fuel and take care of yourself, the better you're going to do in training. So.
Yeah. I remember Steve saying something early on when I started doing triathlon. He said, this is 24/7. He said, this is not just you doing it for 2-3 hours a day. It's like everything you do actually matters in the sport, which I think is what draws us to this lifestyle. And again, that's why we call it a lifestyle. Okay, moving on. I'm going down the line of what I see you guys on top. So Charlie, you're next.
Cool. I think for me, well, I guess I got a couple. First one would be like you get an athlete, you get them on board, and they're just gung ho, which is awesome. You want to be ready, excited to train, but they're like, they want to go, 0 to 100 in 2 weeks with training, want to ramp up super aggressively. And me, like, I love that. I try to ride that, but try to like dial it back a little bit, but still ride that line where they might be doing a little too much, but just enough for they're so excited they can handle it. I've had it too where it's, I know it could be bad if we go too aggressive, but then they just keep hounding you to ramp up, and all of a sudden they're like, let's just say they're doing 45-minute runs, they want to do a 90-minute run, the next week. It's like, all right, you can do it. I'm not a fan of it. We can make it work. And all of a sudden they're tired, 3 or 4 days later. They can't do their next training, the next session, or the next workout. So I think too, just like you gotta like hone in that excitement, make sure they're scaling properly. It's probably just my early training mistake that they make.
Perfect.
So.
Can I just speak to this? Because we do get some athletes, we love the excitement, but you also come in and you hired a coach to tell you what to do, but then you tell us what to do. And that usually is a recipe of not a successful athlete of what they want, and it doesn't work out. You're hiring us for our expertise on how to get you to the start line healthy and in the best possible shape possible. So I would say as best you can kind of lean into that opportunity and resource. So, okay. Did you want to add one more, or I can go on to the next coach?
Oh yeah, I guess I was going to say scheduling too, where it's like, going to, I guess Keegan kind of knows how I like to schedule things, kind of like 2 different week cycles, where it's like, they just won't tell me, or, they won't communicate that they moved, let's say a long run workout from Saturday to Sunday. It didn't tell me. Then they're that a terrible workout Tuesday when they're supposed to have 2 days rest, not one. And it's just like kind of communication, like make sure that they have that. It's an early mistake too. It's like, just tell me. It's, we can make it work. Just tell me we can adjust days and shift. So
yeah. I think the reason we get that a lot, some athletes don't want to bother the coach, but I'm like, that is why you're paying us. Like, especially if you move a key session around, like you need to ask us, how do we need to adjust, versus try to think you can do it on your own. Use us. So, okay, Alex, we'll go to you. Great.
Awesome. Glad I'm not last, and I'm smiling because I do all of these things myself. So always mess up nutrition, never rest enough. And I think for me too is going too hard in the workouts. And I was guilty of this in my collegiate track career, like showing up and there's some big dogs and they're, NCAA All-American athletes. And then I'm trying to do the same workouts they're doing at the same pace. And I think we could all be guilty of that. Like if we show up to the track on Wednesday and you're trying to keep up with like the top pace group, you should sit back and A, am I ready to do that? And B, how's that going to affect the rest of my training for the rest of this build? And it will offset like the outcome of what you want through the actual triathlon itself. So your goals all of a sudden get extended and suddenly you're winning the workouts and you're not winning the race. I think secondarily too is training with data, like especially here, this is good in Austin. It's 117 degrees, and if you're not looking at your heart rate and adjusting your training accordingly, like you have to go 30% less on the heart rate in Austin in the summer than you do in the winter. And your mile time goes like way down or way up, I guess. But just make sure you're training with data and doing the workouts how they're intended to be done. But like I said, I still get out of the gates a little fast. I run a little hard and try to keep up with Simon. So these are easy things that like I need to keep checking up with myself on in my own training.
Awesome. Yes, perfect. Okay, Mackenzie.
Yes, one thing we talk about fueling, but actually practicing your race day nutrition 7, 8, 9 weeks out before the race. I still see people that's like, well, I think I'm going to do this and a little bit of this. And it's like, that needs to be nailed down again, 7 or 8 weeks before you start racing. That's a very easy thing to do. And it shouldn't be willy-nilly. It should be, this is exactly what I have that morning. And this is exactly what I have on the bike, run, etc. So nailing that down. And then again, what Alex was saying, we cannot be worrying about pace right now, especially in the summer. It really should just be heart rate driven, and maybe even RPE driven, so rate of perceived exertion, because your pacing is not going to be where you think it's going to be, and you cannot be scared by the fact that it may be a little bit slower in these times. So just kind of being aware of that and then having some patience. Like we view all of your all's schedules, your training plans, and we are going to increase fitness as we see fit. And so if your aerobic hour long run is the same as it was a month ago, it still means you're gaining fitness. Like there's a lot of ways that we can look at fitness holistically, and your performance management chart is one of them. But just have confidence in your coach that we know we can see everything in the big picture and see each one of you all are gaining fitness when needed and backing off when needed. And so I think just having confidence in us, patience, and then fueling.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, Coach Kyle, you are next.
Okay, so the one thing that I'd say is athletes not communicating with the coach about maybe some life things that they have going on. So like, let's say for an example, you get an athlete, maybe they have a couple workouts that are going bad in a row, and they're like, oh, this didn't go right, I'm not feeling that good here. And then you ask me like, hey, maybe there's some things going on at work, you think you have things going on with the family, et cetera, what it could be. And they could be like, oh, I haven't gotten that much sleep the last night, I've been up with the kids, I had a work thing I had to fly to, and I just came back in late last night. And it's like, communicating that stuff with us allows us to be able to adjust the training so you can actually get recovered, feel good, and then get back into training feeling good. Because if we're just going to keep pushing it and you're not recovering well and you got things going on in life, your training's not going to be going well. So it's like, let's just maybe take a step back. Let's maybe either take a day off, let's take a couple of easy days, whatever it may be. Let's get back in the groove of it, and then let's get back into some good training. And let's just not keep pushing and expect things to automatically just turn around out of nowhere. So
That's honestly such a key one, Kyle. I see people travel for work or have very stressful days, and they still want to come home and do a very hard workout. And stress is stress. And so you have to balance that out. And so if you're having that very stressful life situation, well, we have to balance it out with, hey, we're going to do aerobic training that day. We can't add more stress on top of that. And that's what's going to benefit you. And guys, you can get so fit through aerobic training. You don't have to keep going hard all the time. That is the basis of the training plan. It's really 80 to even 90% of the training that is actually pushing the ball forwards and solidifying like the strong foundation for when you can go hard at those very key moments. So awesome. That was perfect. Andrea and Keegan.
You want to go first? Or me?
You can go.
Me? All right. I have two things. One is also communicating like the mental side. Like, how are you doing? Are you starting to get burnt out? So a lot of times I see this with my Ironman athletes. When we start doing like the thick of the block and we're in kind of the heart of the workouts, sometimes I see where they start to get a little bit burnt out. And it's like, hey, we really need to start pushing these 5-hour rides, or 5-hour rides plus the runoff. Like, how can I help you mentally get through this? Or how can we prioritize that? So if it's giving up like a runoff earlier in the week so that you're fresh for the big weekend, I like to try to do that. So not only communicating like what's going on in your life, but how are you doing within the sport too mentally? It's a big component that I've seen. And then also one is stacking workouts. If someone misses, let's say, a Tuesday workout, they'll throw it all to Wednesday and try to do this massive Wednesday, and then they don't accomplish that, and all of a sudden it becomes a snowball effect and you never make it up. So for me, like when I see athletes start to miss things, if it's not a crucial one and I don't have to rearrange the week to make it like fit, I just say, let it go, move on, we'll be just fine. So stacking and then also managing mental energy is two mistakes.
And then I would say not knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So just kind of making sure you know the purpose of each session, whether like asking your coach, why are we doing this? What phase of the block are we in? You know, I think there's so many workouts in a week. Sometimes we just show up, plug in, and just check it off the box. But if you know the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to have a lot more heart and soul into that workout and walk away feeling better about it.
Yeah, perfect. And it will stop you making mistakes. If you know it has to be an aerobic run, you know what the benefits of that, and then you run it too quickly, then you have a hard run the next day, you're just, as you said, a snowball effect. It just kind of ruins the next day's workout. And we do these calls to understand everything because we want your full buy-in. There's so much confidence that comes from buy-in of the program, and then in turn you just execute perfectly, and in turn you get fitter. So Nick, I think you're the last one.
Last one, I get the position Alex.
I think he's breaking up. Is he breaking up for you all?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll see. Okay. Sorry, Nick. Okay, guys, it's 6:26. Does everyone have any questions? You can type them in the chat. We can address something since we lost Nick on that one. This took most of the call, so I'm going to save that Training Peaks presentation that I said I was going to go over and just kind of explain what we talked about on that for next week. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. I'm trying to think. Here's a common one I see happening all the time. So just say you're going out for an aerobic run and just say you know your max aerobic heart rate is 140. Well, you go out, it's hot outside, and you start running your normal pace, and all of a sudden you're at 140, like within half a mile. Well, guess what? With normal decoupling, which means your heart rate is going to go up because of the heat, and your pace is going to go down, which is not what we want to do. You're just going to be basically slowing down throughout the run, and we really want to avoid it. And so I've really encouraged people to start really, really slow, where maybe if your max aerobic heart rate is 140, well, after the first mile, you're only at 130, and then you're building it up until you get just right below 140. And then the other thing to avoid decoupling of heart rate, which means the heart rate goes up and pace goes down, which means now you need to slow down. So now if you want to run your aerobic runs faster, you need to hydrate. Even your 30, 40-minute runs, especially if you're in Texas right now, I still take a handheld with me. I still make sure it's ice cold. I know there was this one thing that Trigger Point actually created one here, which was basically you're holding ice in your hands, like anything to keep your core body temperature down was really, really helpful. And again, you can then run a quicker aerobic run if you're just taking these little steps at the end of the day. Okay. So does anyone want anything? Yeah, we got a question. With the Austin heat, with heart rate training, how should I handle the hills? Take the heart rate spike and balance it with a walk after the hill, or walk the hill? I'll go ahead and answer that is I would actually walk. If it's a long run, I would actually walk the hill. If you are just building miles and you're just, again, it's a base run, a base building fitness run, keep that heart rate in control. The only time, I know, Alex, do you want to answer that any different as far as when, oh, and Charlie, you can also have a stab at it. Alex, you go ahead first. What would you do?
Yeah, I would, definitely take the hill easier than you would perceive. And then maybe even if you feel like it, like go harder on the downhill. And I think about that in racing, like you always think you have to like charge the uphills, but in actuality, if you like, okay, I'm going to manage this hill and then run hard down the other side, and you make up a lot of spots that way. But yeah, really manage your effort up the hill and you could see the heart rate spike. But yeah, nice and easy.
Awesome. Charlie, would you answer it any differently?
I was gonna say the same thing. Just take it super easy. Just recover on the backside or on the downhill, especially for if you're running. In my opinion, if like for me, it's just run athletes. So hills are very beneficial. So I'd say definitely run if you can up it. Obviously, if you're really spiking, really slow down or take a little walk to lower it. But yeah, as a pure runner, try to get up and over it and then just recover and rest again. So.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, the only time I think I would actually run up the hill is where like I know I need to build strength in my legs, but then I still I focus on that. I don't focus on getting up the hill as quickly as possible. I just focus like I'm just trying to build strength, and I'm trying to learn how to control my breathing and have the right form up this hill. And if that's the case for you, and you're like, I really do need these little hills in there to help me with my running, then yes, manage it. But then over the top, if you need to bring your heart rate down a bit, then take a bit of a walk break and then get back into it. But know that the more and more you do that, the harder it's going to be to recover. The heart rate's not going to come down anymore. So maybe say, hey, I'm going to decide on this 30-minute run, I'm going to run 3 or 4 hills, get the benefit of the strength work up the hills, and then the rest I'm going to walk up it and be smart about the rest of my run. Okay, guys, I think that's it. It's 6:30 on the dot. Appreciate everyone being on the call. We will see you next week. Thanks, coaches, for your contribution. Bye, you guys.